thing on? We've been studying Shomeah kOneh since sometime in the middle of December. I'm going to put on the screen the part from Rav Asher Weiss. Let me recap what we saw thus far in the last section, which was 2 weeks ago. We were talking about two different conceptual approaches to what does it mean when someone says Shomeah kOneh. We're not going to rehash the Gemaras in Sukka, Lamed Chet, not the Gemara in Sota, not the Gemara in Brachot. We saw that previously, not Tosfot. We're just looking at one thing now. What does Shomeah kOneh mean conceptually? According to the Beit Halevi, it means one person is saying it, the other person is listening, but it's as if that person who is listening, their lips are moving. It's like they're saying it themselves. It's not different. It just so happens that there are two ways that you can do mitzvot involving dibur. One of them is through actually moving your lips. The other one is through listening to the sound of it. And it's as if. That's Shomeah kOneh. It's not the same thing as someone answers amen to brachas. It's just that you're literally listening in. The Chazon Ish disagreed. He thought that really Shomeah kOneh means that the individual who is not speaking, but they're piggybacking, my language, not the Chazon Ish's language, on the words spoken by the other person. And therefore, the question became, well, in what context do we see a difference between these two conceptual approaches? So to take a very easy example, there would be a chiluk between the Beit Halevi and the Chazon Ish about what to do in the case where a person was in the middle of Shmoneh Esrei and the Shliach Tzibor was in the middle of Chazarat HaShatz, and you go out to Kedusha or to Kaddish, the Yehei Shmei Rabbah. The Beit Halevi paskins like Tosfot. There's no point in stopping, like Rabbeinu Tam and the Re. If you stop in the middle and you're listening, well, it's like you're saying those words. Remember, the other person saying it, it's like you're saying it. You can't do that, because that would be a hefsek. Therefore, you might as well just keep davening. But Rashi says, no, you listen in. When you hear them saying it, it's as if you're saying it in as much as they're saying the words. You're not saying the words. You're standing quietly. But you hear it, Shomeah kOneh. You're not answering amen. You're not saying any words, but they're saying the words, and you've connected yourself to the words that they're speaking. Even Tosfot conceded in that case that Gadol HaMinhag, even though they held the way they held, they said, no, but Gadol HaMinhag, we're not going to insist that is how things need to be if you're in the middle of the Amida. And there were other examples that came up. We learned another example was the question of what does it mean when we speak about, let's say, the idea of a shaliach tzibur, that the Gemara says in the Mishnah, and then the Gemara and elsewhere in Brachot, that if a shliach tzibur made a mistake, that's a bad sign for the shliach tzibur, but it's also a siman ra le sholchav. It's also a bad sign for those who sent him, which makes it sound like the shliach tzibur is davening. He's the emissary of the people. Isn't that what the words mean? It is what it means. So if that's true, that seems to veer much more in the direction of the Chazon Ish and not the Beit Halevi. Because the Chazon Ish's whole point was, it's a shlichut, yeah? So wait a minute, what about the idea we said, a shlucha, we say shlucha shel adam kamoto, it's like that individual. So we started getting into the back and forth, how are you going to define a shaliach tzibur? Are you literally saying that a shliach tzibur is literally performing the mitzvah of tefillah for you? If so, you don't have to be in shul. Why don't you just give them some money and tell them, pray for me? I'm going golfing. We can't do that. It's a mitzvah that falls in the karkafta de gavra. Every individual has a chiyuv to say it. Right, you have to hear it. That's true. But the more we push it in the direction of shlichut, if we took it on a continuum, there's shlichut and there's shlichut. There's shlichut, so-and-so is going to sort of represent me, means they're going to say the words, and I'm going to listen in. But they're not literally my shaliach in the classical sense of a person gives a ring to a shaliach and says, go to the other town, be makadosh this isha for me. That's really a shliach. And there we say, mitzvah bo yotem v'shlucho. That can't literally be what's happening, because that's true. Remember, if it's really literally a shlichut, we don't need the guy who's the mishaleach to be in the room for the shliach to carry the shlichut. So Shomeah kOneh does imply very strongly, contra the idea of the shliach tzibur as literally an emissary, like shlichut would be elsewhere in Shas, as he's your emissary, but you still have to listen in. You're doing something here. There's a koach of the mashmiya, the one who causes the sound to happen, and the koach of the shomeah through listening. Another example came up, and that was the example of kiddush. I don't know, did we actually read the kiddush one inside? I don't even remember anymore. We touched upon it. Okay,
No,
why don't we look at it inside? Did we see it? What did you say, Art? I didn't hear you.
I don't think we did.
Why don't we see it inside and put it up on the screen? It's page Kuf Samach Hey in the Rav Asher Weiss pages that I gave out a couple of times ago. So I'm putting it up on the screen. Kuf Samach Hey, 165. Ot Gimel. I'll try to make it as big as possible so everyone can watch it. Okay.
Wait 1 second.
Here we go. Yeah, see it? Okay, let's go. B'orach Chaim Siman Reish Ayin Aleph. That's the Siman in Shulchan Aruch about Kiddush. Nechleku ha'olat Shabbat ve'al Tosefet Shabbat b'Kiddush Shabbat im adif she'yikadesh adam be'atzmo o yishma mipi ha'makadesh rosh habayit. What's better when it's time for Kiddush? Should you have every individual make Kiddush on their own, or should you hear it from the Rosh Habayit, the one who is at the head of the household, will represent everybody in Kiddush, or some variation thereof? Be'olat Shabbat katav de'adiv she'yikadesh be'atzmo. The mitzvah bo yotem b'shlucha uses that expression. In fact, better mitzvah for you to be done by you than to delegate it to somebody else if possible. Where it's not possible, fine. You don't know the words. You don't have a bencher, whatever it is. You don't know the words. So you tell somebody else you can do it. But otherwise, you should do it on your own. For that reason, uv'tosefet Shabbat sifkat yod tamalav. Dema zeh inyan lemitzvah bo yotem b'shlucho v'halohu Shomeah be'atzmo. Shomeah have a kOneh mamash ayin sham. The Tosefet Shabbat said to the Olat Shabbat. Wait, you think this is a din in shlichut? There's a din in shlichut that everybody's telling the person who's the Rosh Habayit, excuse me, they point to that person, you're going to be motzing me on the bracha? You're my shaliach? Are they going to give a pruta before Shabbos? Of course not. Au contraire, the Rosh Habayit makes kiddush. Everybody else in the room is yotze because they're listening, and the Baal Habayit has in mind to be motzi everybody. They have kavana. Let's say that's all you need, but it's not midin shlichut. It's Shomeah have a kOneh mamish. The one who's listening, right. It's like they are responding, i.e., like they're saying the words after the fellow.
We also differentiated between that, and we also touched upon Pesach night.
Yeah. Oh, we did talk about this. Yeah. Oh, Ira reminds me, right? We did talk about the distinction between Shabbos, where the Kiddush is the Iker, and the Seder night, where the Daled Kosot, where the Shtia is part and parcel of the mitzvah. Thank you. Daled Kosot. Remember? So that was the difference between Milo Lugmav, right, filling one cheekful, versus Rov Kos, and who has to make Kiddush? Everybody, just the Rosh Habayit, etc. So, Venira deha Olat Shabbat Nakat, Kavanah Chazon Ish. Sounds like the Olat Shabbat, the first opinion said, better that everybody makes their own Kiddush. That's like the Chazon Ish, right? Degeder, top of the next column. Degeder, Zed, Domel Shlichut, B'Yisado. Fundamentally, it's related to, even though Olat Shabbat can't say it's totally a Shlichut, right? You're going to send someone, this Shabbos, can you make Kiddush for me? I'm not going to even be there. No, you have to hear it. Yeah. So, but it's in the spectrum, it's in the world of Shlichut somehow. But Tosefet Shabbat, Nakat Kehavanat Habir Halach Beit Halevi, excuse me. He understood it like the Beit Halevi, namely that if you hear someone else saying it, it's actually like your lips are moving. They're not, because Shomeah is a form of dibur. It's the receiving side of dibur, but it's also a form of dibur. Happens to be the auditory type of dibur. V'ayin od b'shulchan aruch harav siman reish yod gimel seivav shegam hu katav the tov levarach be'atzmo v'lo tzeit b'shmiya mishum de mitzvah b'yitav mishlucho. He also wrote, better that you should make the bracha on your own and not to be yotze in shmiya alone, because mitzvah b'yitav mishlucho sounds like the Shulchan Aruch Harav paskins like the Olat Shabbat against the Tosefet Shabbat. Again, in most of our homes, I think most of the time, the Rosh Habayit makes Kiddush, and that's it. But there are deot lekan to lekan, right? There are opinions that hold otherwise, and there could be other considerations at play. I'll give you an example: a chinuch consideration, when to train, younger people, younger boys who are there. They're going to go out on their own some days. They want to learn how to make Kiddush for themselves. So you want to encourage them. You can sense, they did something. You can make a case that it's okay as well.
What's okay, Rabbi?
Larry and I remember one more second. Larry had mentioned, I think Larry was the one who asked me, I think it was Larry, correct me if I'm wrong, at the end of the shiur, can one person make a borei pri adama and everybody eats the potato chips or not? Remember we talked about this. And I basically answered no, but let me qualify it a little more. It's actually the sugya of Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim Reish Yud Gimel, that basically the Ramah writes, there is a good case to be made, potentially, that one person's bracha could be motzi other people if they don't know how to make a bracha. So you're running a summer camp in the Ukraine in 1999 or Belarus 1995, and nobody knows how to make a bracha. So you tell everybody, listen, I'm going to say the blessing now, the bracha. I'm explaining to you what it is. I'm going to say the bracha. You just, when I finish the bracha, if you want it, if you know how to say amen, say amen. And if not, just eat. The point is that could be Shomeah kOneh. But if they know how to make the bracha, the Ramah writes, other than for bread and wine, which are two things, and this is the operative expression, upon which a person is koveya a suda as a group, other than those two, the minhag Yisrael is for other foods, all other foods, everyone should make their own bracha, ideally. Unless, again, there's an educational issue, they don't know, they can't speak it for some reason, whatever the case might be. And the idea, it's a whole involved sugya.
So
in the olden days, people didn't have one table they ate at. They ate beheseba, meant they each had a little tray table. We call like a TV dinner table, if you remember those. I don't think anyone has them, but I used to have them growing up. It's a little table. So everyone had one. And what showed they were in one unit eating together? They were sitting sort of in a circle, but they were each at their own, sort of leaning over their own table. And then one person can make the bracha for everybody, or kaveya suda. In fact, I think it's the Mishnah Brewer there says, let's say you're in the middle of a meal and a fruit came to the table that was unrelated to the meal. So in the middle of a meal, usually people don't eat a banana. So let's say you have to make a hadama, like it's not a dvar by machmana suda, right? So if you're in the middle of eating your cholent, your kogel, and whatever else, and your tzimis, and somebody comes in with a banana, in Europe, by the way, nobody ate bananas. It's if you ever saw a banana, it was like a big deal. So they brought a banana to the table. So there'll also be a question about shachiana, but let's say you would have eaten one within the year. So then one person could make the bracha for everybody. Why? Because we're already b'tseiruf, we're already together in this meal because we made a motzi together, we made kiddush together. Those two things, yayin and lechem. And it turns out that's actually what goes on for the bracha of kiddush and the bracha of hamotzi. Right? That's generally what we do. Okay, there was some questions.
Simanim food on Rosh Hashanah.
Simanim food on Rosh Hashanah.
Yeah, so you're eating the fish head or whatever.
Yeah, if everybody made hamotzi already, the truth is, one person
sometimes you eat it before, right?
Yeah.
Or actually, even on Pesach, on the Seder night, when you're eating the whatever, the parsley or whatever.
That's all before. That's all before. Right.
So everyone has to make there. It's Shomeah kOneh doesn't work then.
There are deot lakan or lakan. The minhag generally is no. Generally, you make the bracha on your own.
I mean, forget about people who don't know and all that. Assume everybody is knowledgeable and
yeah.
Because if you start with that, then you move down a path of everything's kind of okay. But
right. So if there right, yesh deot lakan or lakan. Iris pointing out that karpas. Most people, I think everybody makes the bracha, but the truth is there is a machloket about how much is meant to be done by the Baal HaSeder and how much is meant to be done by everybody else. It's a question also about the Seder itself. Like if Shomeah kOneh really works, which it does, it's, we did it at the Gemara. One of the 36 proofs of Rav Asher Weiss going back and forth is like, could someone be reading all the Haggadah for everybody else? Why do I have to say it? Either I'm piggybacking on that guy's reading, or I'm saying it when they're saying it. I'm just listening in. I don't have to say it myself. So there's a back and forth in the minute. Typically, as people know how to read, they should read. They should try.
Okay.
Yeah. Let me push ahead because I'm just watching the clock and I have somewhat of a hard stop in the energy department, other things, but there's all sorts of different applications of this, sometimes favoring the Beit Halevi, sometimes favoring the Chazon Ish. What Rav Asher Weiss does after 36, and we're not going to read all of them, turn to page Kuf Ayin Dalet in the hard copy. Just keep flipping. You're going to see it on the top. It'll be on the top right-hand corner. And there, it mentions, it's Simon like Lamed Vav, which is one about, what happens if a person's thinking about Divrei Torah. Do you have to recite Birchot Torah or not? Right? So you're listening. Someone else is speaking Divrei Torah. You're just listening. You didn't say Birchot Torah. Do you have to say Birchot Torah? You're not speaking the words. You're just listening. So it's a machloket, right? It says right here, Ot Lamed Vav, and Simon Mem Zayin, Sif Dalet, the Shulchan Aruch writes, if you're mahar b'divrei Torah, you're part from having to make a bracha and Birchot Torah. The Shari Tshuva quotes there from the Halachot Ketanot, the Shomeah divrei Torah chayav levarach, came into Shomeah kOneh. If you're listening, you're not saying anything, but it's like you're saying it because you're hearing it and you perform. That's mitzvah, Talmud Torah. My brain's engaged, my ears are engaged. So that's like I'm saying it. So you better make the bracha. They also go according to these two, right? If you hold, you don't have to make a bracha. Here is nothing. So it's because I have in mind that I'm not actually saying it. Now that person's saying it. I'm yotze with them, but I'm not actually saying the words. So if I'm not saying it, well, I have to make a bracha. But according to the Beit Halevi, would say, no, it's as if you're saying it. You're listening as if you're talking. Just the other side of talking is hearing. So you're hearing, but it's also a form of dibur. It's part of the dyad between the Shomeah and the Mashmiah. The Mashmiah, the one who makes the sound, Shomeah, the one who hears. By the by, the Gra paskin that there was such a thing as like the Beit Halevi comes from sort of the base medrash of the Gra. Not surprising. I don't know why Rosh Hashanah didn't quote the Gra on this, but he writes here, Ach be'emet nira tfeid l'kulama shiny Shomeah kaven de ikar bergadato yalfinan mi ki shem Hashem ekra. V'sham shemu b'nei Yisrael divrei Torah mipum mimalel Rav Ravin Moshe Rabbeinu v'dumi dahatam chai v'shmei levarach v'zil perushe. Okay, it's a nice idea. It basically says, maybe learning is totally, the Rav Weiss surmises, it's totally different. Maybe Shomeah with regard to Birchot Torah is different because Birchot Torah itself is ki shem Hashem ekra. How do we learn, according to those who maintain that Birchot Torah is actually a mitzvah min Torah, the Ramban and others? The Torah in Parshat Azinu says, when I call out in the name of God, you ascribe greatness to his name. Ki shem Hashem ekra, I'll call out in God's name means when you hear it, that's what triggers the Birchot Torah. So Rav Weiss says maybe that's, in that case, the Jewish people were hearing the Divrei Torah. So that was their call to Birchot Torah. Okay, so that's why they were called to Birchot Torah, because the listening was just like the speaking. So maybe there it's like exceptional. Now I put an arrow. I think I put the arrow in the hard copy or not? The photocopy, Kofayin Dalet?
No.
Okay.
No.
Well, all right. Well, I'm on page Kofayin Dalet.
But I see the arrow.
The arrow's on the screen, so that's good enough. So he gives us his approach. Rav Weiss sort of came up with his own idea about this. Lichora nira bezeh is after the 36 proofs. Again, there weren't proofs because they went this way, it went that way. It wasn't machriya. Dinei be'emet nira diyesh begedi yisodi zeh the Shomeah kOneh gimel darchei havana v'lo shnayim. The truth is, I think, says Rav Weiss, there are 3 ways to understand this and not 2. Ubir darkinu me'ein derech memutzaat bein shnei hadrachim hanal. Nizkar le'el means I'm going to give you now my approach, which he says is sort of like a middle ground between the Beit Halevi on one side and the Chazon Ish on the other. It's not that Shomeah kOneh is that listening is exactly equivalent to speaking and you never need to actually speak. It's 6 to 1/2 dozen the other. Either you could say it or you could listen. It's equal. It's an equal thing you could do. It didn't mean that the person who listens in, it's as if they are saying the words literally. It's like speech, but it's not actually speech, right? Shomeah kOneh. So Rav Weiss wants to say the words, the letter kaf there is kaf hadimyon. It's like you're saying it, but it's not as good as if you had actually said it yourself, right? And the bold part, the Shmira dibur nechshevet ki dibur, ach lo mishum shiyotze b'dibur chaveiro, el mishum da Shmira nechshevet lo. Amar oten advarim sheshama. It's as if he had said the words that he heard, right? Amar oten advarim sheshama. U'she'amu Shomeah kOneh perusho kOneh mamash. When they use the expression kOneh, they were explaining it as you're saying it direct. The original explanation. It's like you're actually saying it. You're literally like saying the words. V'yesod zeh mushtat al geder mesiyam shel shlichut. Right? That principle itself, though, that there could be some communication, is related to some kind of shlichut. Ve'adif minei, but it's better than it. What? No, it's founded upon. Tashtit, like Evan Shtia is the foundation stone. So Evan Mushtat, I'll get him a shlichut. It's founded upon some kind of definition of shlichut ve'adif minei, and it's better than it. When he's listening actively. Nechshav, Kilu Amarhu et Oto Adibur Sheshama. So it's as if he is saying that speech that he heard. A proof to this is in Brachot Chaf Amud Bet. Sham Amru Da'af im Hirur Kedibur Damya. Even there it describes, even if thinking about something, meditating on it is like speech. Mikol Malkum, in any case, mutar l'bal keri lahar b'divrei Torah, right? Someone who had a seminal emission, we learned they are mutter to think about. They're allowed to think about divrei Torah, even though they're not allowed to speak it. The Einis are about carry el bedibur kasinai. Right? The issue there is the dibur is the problem for a bal kari, but not the shmiya, because they're just being mahara, the thinking. V'afal pichein, nonetheless, mevur sham betosfot the b'shmiya asur mishum de Shomeah kOneh. But Tosfot goes further and says, well, hirhur is one thing, but shmiya, that's something else. Shmiya is on a higher level. It's like you're actually saying it. But it says Rav Asher Weiss, Vikasha, the halogam hirhur kediburhu. But I thought we were saying that hirhur, you think about something, it's like you're speaking it. V'afal pichein inesur b'bal kari, hareilan lehedya, the shine hirhur kedibur, sheperusha de maharher, mikayim mitzvah kihamadaber, ach mikomak nechshav kedibur mamash. Lachein eno asel b'bal kari, aval kshamru Shomeah kOneh, ave kOneh mamash v'asel b'bal kari. Let me say it like this: there's listening, there's speaking, and there's a stage before listening called hirhur. Hirhur is thinking about it. The bal kari is allowed to be maharher in divrei Torah because that's not like speaking. But why is it talking, say, the Bali Tosfot about hirhur specifically? Because hirhur is not the same thing as shmiya. Shmiya means I have in mind that I'm listening to something that someone else is saying, and I want to be yotze with what they're saying. And remember the Bali Tosfot's basic shita, that's like you're saying it, remember? So therefore, this seems to be the idea. For Rav Asher Weiss, he says, I think there are three possibilities. One is the way of the Beit Halevi, that when you hear it, it's like you're saying it. You're actually the one saying the words to such an extent that you could not be in the middle of Shemona Esrei and claim that you are not being mafsik if you're listening to someone else's brachas. You are being mafsik. Therefore, you shouldn't listen and just keep doing your thing. There's the approach of the Chazon Ish, that in the world of shlichut, you're memana a shaliach, where the shaliach is going to be basically representing you. You're not saying it. You're listening into what they're doing, but the listening in is an act of attachment to whatever it is that they're doing. Asher Weiss says, I'm going to give you something that's sort of in the middle of these two things, that there is an element of shlichut that's going on, but the element of shlichut is not entirely that all that's happening is you're telling this person, you're listening, I'm listening to what you're saying, but you're really the one speaking. There is an element, once I attach myself, to actually being among the speakers, not as much as the person who actually says the words, but on a spectrum closer to one who says the words. In other words, the concept here is that there's two extremes. The Rav Asher Weiss says, I'm going to give you something in the middle that draws from each of them. One part from the Beit Halevi and one part from the Chazon Ish. And he says that basically, I'm going to try to reconcile what I was trying to present through all these 36 proofs. Again, I mentioned it a few times. Like it's bamboozling, and as much as you can't figure out what precisely he's driving at, if we could actually plug in different the Beit Halevi here, Chazon Ish there, Beit Halevi here, Chazon Ish there. It's like, all right, so which is it? He showed that you can make a strong case for both. So what he wants to argue is there's a third way that sort of whatever the word is amalgamates the other approaches. It puts them together, the two approaches, and he says this middle line will show us why aspects of each keep coming up again and again. All right. So here. Okay. So Venira Shitat trying to remember who this is because he quoted so many different people. It might have been the Gra connected to the Beit Halevi. I'm not entirely sure why he put that there. Okay, V'zenira Shirta Gimel Aleph. I don't think it's Gur Aryeh. He quoted the Shagas Aryeh many times, but I just don't remember right now. But
Avram?
No. I mean, it could be for the Gra. It could be the Shagas Aryeh. He quoted Shagas Aryeh earlier. I don't really exactly remember. I'm sorry. The Kevin the Shemeah kOneh Pirush the Nefesh Ki'ilu Diber. Yefshar Lomar Kain. Ella b'mi sheroy ledaber aval be'ileim she'en roy lebila Bila ma'akevet bo. So it might have been the Shagad Aryeh. And it's just a misprint. I just don't remember right now. But since Shomeah kOneh means it's as if you're speaking, then it has to be someone who can speak. But if someone was a mute and they weren't able to speak altogether, then Shomeah kOneh really wouldn't work for them. Because the fact that they don't have the capacity to speak is not because of a halachic reason at this moment, or it's some congenital defect, lo elaine, or some impediment that prevents them physically from speaking. Shomeah kOneh wouldn't work.
And sign language doesn't do anything, do anything for that.
No, it wouldn't work. It wouldn't work. So let me give you here's where he starts taxing for final approach, if I could use that analogy to explain, right? Again, it's somewhere in the middle. He's amalgamated a part of the Beit Halevi and a part of the Chazon Ish. Okay, that the listening to the dibur is like dibur of a sort. It's a merging of the two approaches. Lefi gather mechud zeh afshar de kasher. I'm on the bottom paragraph, left side. De kasher matzina b'poskim shnachliku im Shomeah kOneh have kOneh mamish or eno kOneh mamish. Is it literally like you're responding or not literally? Hakavana l'mash nachlu chazon ish Beit Halevi. El be'emet yotzehu b'dibur chaveiro. The truth is, you are yotzei in the speech of your friend. Ach lo mishum shechaveiro oseh lema'ano el dibur chaveiro mityaches elav mamash ki'ilu amarohu. The speech of your friend, you are connecting to the speech of your friend, and it's like you are speaking, but you're not actually the one speaking. They're speaking for you. The Beit Halevi's approach was, when you hear it, it's as if it's coming out of your mouth. It's like they're, so to speak, the ventriloquist, and you're the dummy. You don't have to move your actual lips. The fact that you listen to it, you just close your eyes and you're listening. It's like your mouth is moving. The Chazon Ish said, no, you're not moving at all. You just attach yourself to what they're saying, and they're the one doing the talking. The Rav Asher Weiss says, I'm going to draw now a line from each of them, and I'm going to put it up the middle. When you are listening to this person, you're attaching yourself to them, and they are speaking, but they're representing you in the speech, but it is as if you are speaking. Go to the fourth to the last line. Now we can use this, he says, to just answer a bunch of contradictions. The ain't stira bein masha matzina b'lashon mishnah ubirkei Yosef umachzer vitri the Shomeah kOneh have midin shlichut. We saw that there were a bunch of times that we were saying that Shomeah kOneh works because of shlichut. I gave you an example, was a shliach tzibur, right? And other places we saw that Shomeah kOneh sounds like it's like you're actually saying it. Because the truth is Rav Weiss, both of these elements are extant always. That's why it's not really a contradiction. Vein stira bein divrei habach b'siman taf lamed dal the Shomeah kOneh have mishum shlichut lidvarav b'siman kuf pei gimel david kOneh mamish. The Bach seems to contradict himself in these two contexts. Therefore, the person has to cover their head when they're listening in. It's like they're saying it. When the individual is listening to that which is spoken by their friend, the chaver, the friend, is the shaliach to be motzi, the individual who's listening in. Aval barur, the ein zeh hadina chalei the shlichut, the b'mitzvah shebedibur l'mahane shlichut. But don't think that this means that you've made the other person a shliach. In other words, Rav Weiss is saying, I'm a little more in the Chazon Ish's camp, but not ad kedei kach, the way the Chazon Ish wanted to say it. You have to draw it back a little bit. He's not entirely your shliach. He's entire shliach. So we're describing, you don't have to be in the room, etc. Right? Because generally, mitzvah shebadibor, the mitzvah is a mitzvah shebadibor. Shlichu doesn't work. V'od im shlichohu lama tzarich lishmoa. If he is really your shliach, you don't have to listen in. Ela al korchach have a anaf misuyam midina shlichut. It's like a branch. It's branched off from the din of shlichut. It's on the tree of shlichut, but it's not quite shlichut. Vayedei shmiyato havalei mamash, through the listening, it's like mamash ki'iluhu amar et sheshama mechaveiro va'adif mishlichut da'alma. But it's better than regular shlichut. She'ein ba din shituf klal shel mishleach b'maseh shaliach, because there's no collaboration going on when the act of speech is happening between the one who did the sending and the one who's the shaliach. Meaning the mishaleach is the listener. He doesn't have to say to the mashmiya, the guy's going to make the sound, you're being motzi me now. He's listening. That's all you need. And the fact is that it's not that he was memanahem. He didn't formally say, I make you my shaliach. It was assumed when that guy was doing the talking. My listening in connects me to that person, but it's not now that they're my representative. It's that now that the connection is built between the two of us, his words are my words. As opposed to the Beit Halevi who said, there's no shlichut here. It's just that there's a sound in the air coming from a human being, and you hear it. That's all you need, and now you're speaking it. Rosh Weiss said, but there doesn't be a connection between the two people. But don't call it full on shlichut. It can't be that. Mark, go ahead, please.
So where does the case of, I'm going to call affirming the power of amen fall into this, or I may be better asked, why doesn't it fall into this paradigm? Because if you have speaking, saying it on one hand, right, and passively listening on the other hand, to me, hearing and affirming would fall in that middle somewhere, but yet it seems to be ignored. It doesn't seem to have any power at all.
Remember, yeah, you are right, but remember what our model is. And we did all this foundational work. The model is Hallel. Not right. So
Right,
what we're dealing, so in the lab here, when we're analyzing this, we're not talking about amen. We're talking about, if you just listened in, would it be like you said it?
Well, okay, but we had other paradigms in our laboratory.
Yeah.
We had repetition.
Yeah.
Right. Which would also fall in, right? Meaning I go to Larry's for Shabbos. Let's say dinner, because we have a better kiddush.
Yep.
I mean, one more halachically founded.
Yep.
And, he says kiddush and he says, Baruch atah Hashem, and I say Baruch atah Hashem, or I say it undertone like we talked about on Pesach.
Right.
Right. Somehow that to me falls in the middle versus passive and saying it on my own, but yet that doesn't seem to, or answering on main even at that point would seem to fall in the middle, or again, repeating a piece or saying Yehei Shmei or some affirming sentence of some kind.
I join with you. I think you're quite right. But don't forget, we did talk about when we saw the Rambam, we saw that there would be a case where you would need to answer amen. And we were talking about if someone doesn't know what they're hearing, they heard half a bracha, but if they said amen, there's a certain power there, halachically speaking, that's the affirmation. Here we're talking about where you heard all the words, but for some reason you didn't speak.
No. Yeah, but I'm just reacting to Rav Asher Weiss's sort of middle ground of, I guess, kavana or hirhor.
Yeah.
And saying it would seem that it would be easier to pull from some affirmative type. You could pull it directly from Holly. You could pull it directly from Sukkot. You could pull it directly from Sota. And actually, even Brachos, I think it even talks about the power of affirming. I think Beit. I mean, it's in all the Sukkahs in terms
for sure.
So
here we seem to be.
Is Mark saying, so in other words, why don't we? But we do say amen.
We do say amen. So we cover our bases.
Why doesn't it fall in his paradigm? That's what I'm asking.
What he's asking, why didn't Rav Asher Weiss bring up the amen part of things and just say like, your amen is the affirmation.
Well, no, if you're looking for levels, and you say, okay, you have two, right? And so his chiddush is he put a third level in, hirhor. He said,
it's not just that it was hirhor. No. It was more than that. It was that he said, we have on one side,
he's going to combine the two thoughts.
I'm going to combine the two. I'm going to take an element of both and we combine them. That will answer for why in some contexts seems to amplify the position of the Beit Halevi, and other contexts the position of the Chazon Ish. Well, which one is correct? He says, well, they're both correct to an extent. Let me show you the middle ground. The middle ground is to say it's not full on a shlichut. It can't be. That's not going to work. But it's also not correct to say that it's like you're actually literally the one who's
so to rephrase my question, would affirmation or repetition have been as halachically founded as hirhor in his paradigm? And I'm thinking it would be.
Yes, I'm thinking it would be as well.
Yeah.
Why he didn't admit it here, I'm not entirely.
That's all right. I feel redeemed. You agreed with me. so
But
that's fine.
it's a very good point. He could have, but he just didn't.
Yeah,
I'm not sure. I'm I don't want to speak for him. I don't know.
Well, yeah, you don't have to.
No, right. But maybe if I ever get to see him, I could ask. It's a question. My guess is going to be to focus this on Shomeah kOneh means like using the Beit Halevi and the Chazon Ish, where in some contexts you could prove one, in other contexts you could prove the other, and very often you just see a tension between them. It could this way, could that way. Like Kiddush, how should Kiddush go? Is it this way? Is it that way? The Lat Shabbat, Tosefet Shabbat is an example, but there are other examples of Rashi versus Tosfot in Chazar Hashatz. We saw an example. Again, there are 36. I just gave you a little sampling. So Rav Asher Weiss says, okay, good. We have a chiluk here, a chiluk there, but like, why don't you just draw them together? There's a way to connect them. And he showed, like, let's say, and that's what was on the top of this page here. There's even within the Bach, there is a stira in one place, the Bach, Rav Yoel Circus, he says that Shomeah kOneh is shlichut. And in another place, he says, well, Shomeah kOneh is like kOneh mamash. It's literally like you're repeating it. Therefore, you have to cover your head when you hear it, because it's like you're actually saying it. Well, how could both those be true? So he said, once he's hearing it from his friend is like his shaliach to be motzi him, but it's not the actual din, classical din of shlichut. It's a modified shlichut from the tree of shlichut. It's like a branch. It's in the family of shlichut, but it's not actual shlichut. And therefore, when you listen, it is as if you're saying it, and he is your shaliach, but not really your shaliach in the classical sense, because it's a mitzvah of dibur, which means you have to say it's a mitzvah. It's munach al karkafta de gavra. Every individual has to say it, whether you're literally saying it or you're listening in, but you can't just consign it to somebody else and have the Beit Din say it for you. It's on every individual. Ira, question. Ira asking a question. 1 second.
I was just thinking, looking, in thinking about what Mark is saying, it's actually, there's a lot of, I understand exactly what his point is. And if you take it a step further, take Sukkah's, the first night of Sukkot, you're sitting in your Sukkah, and after Kiddush, you say Leishe Basukkah.
Right.
So you can't be my shali. I have to, in order for me to be Mekayim the mitzvah of Yeshiva Basukkah, I have to be the one to make the bracha. I can't be Yotzei, someone else to sit in the Sukkah, because if he's...
You can't be Yotzei to sit in the Sukkah for them, but can be you be Motzi them in the bracha of Leishe Basukkah. It's a great question. So it's a birkat of mitzvah, but the people do answer Amen.
Right.
But let's say they couldn't answer Amen for whatever reason. I don't know why. They didn't want to answer Amen.
Right.
The truth is, it'd be Yotzei. Because the act is the act. It's not a mitzvah of dibur.
No.
Right?
It's not dibur.
Right?
But it's like I'm eating a piece of cake. I'm eating a fruit.
Yeah.
And I say Leishe Basukkah. I have to be, if you're eating the piece of cake or whatever it is, and I'm eating, I have to be the one to say,
Yeah. Yeah.
And then someone says Amen.
Okay.
But they say Amen to the fact that I'm the one. It's on me. It's not shliach.
You're saying you're making kiddush when this happens? You just stop.
No, I'm saying stop. Because I can't be the shaliach for you to sit in the sukkah.
Right. You cannot sit in the sukkah for somebody else.
Right.
It's a mitzvah that's munach al karkafta de gavra. It goes on each person. Every skull. To sit in a sukkah. So you have to be the one to make the bracha, you're saying?
I should be the one to make my own bracha to sit on the sukkah. Because if I'm not,
unless there's a tseiruf going on because of a meal, in which case that's what unites it.
Well, that's the whole point. Because if I make, it's like Havdalah, you don't make a Leishe Basukkah on Havdalah because you're not Koveas, unless you're Koveas Suda.
Okay. Yeah, chinami. But typically you only make Leishe Basukkah when you're Koveas.
Right.
So.
But I'm just saying, when you say Amen,
yeah,
it's the fact that there is the issue.
Yeah. Okay. Accepted. Okay, let's see the bottom of the page here. On the right hand column, Omnam, Hanira Iker, Begeder Zel Lafiani Udati, Al Pima Sheyesh Lach Korabi Yisodin Shomeah kOneh. So indeed, what seems to me the main thing in terms of defining, according to the impoverishment of my opinion, it's a just for the sake of humility, Finus Daiti means according to my humble opinion kind of thing. So what has to be investigated in the principle or the concept of Shomeah kOneh is its definition as a hilchata greda. It's, so to speak, just a halacha. O shema hametziut hishor shadin, or somehow is it not really a halachic concept, but it's something in reality. The kevin Shomeah kOneh b'mtziut hachayim. Dechol tachlit hadibur v'inyano lashmiya dvarav l'zulato ulo shmir ha'acher ein tolad b'dibur ha'echad. So maybe it has to do with reality, namely that when a person listens, their listening is itself a form of response in reality, because the whole purpose of speaking something out loud is that the words should be vocalized to if another person's there. So then they're the ones listening. If the other person's not listening in, they don't hear it, then there's no benefit in the speech of the first one. And in all cases, there's a partnership that's created automatically between one who speaks and one who listens, and what is spoken between them. As we see from the pasuk, back to our Gemara in Sukka Lamed Chet, remember, that was way back when we were actually learning Gemara on the page, which we're going to go back to next week. Hooray for us, to the next sugya. So Lamed Chet Bet, the second source for why we have Shomeah kOneh, was about the fact that it said that Yoshiyahu read it, but it said specifically that he did not read it. Another pasuk said actually that Chilkiah read it. So how can it be both? No, it's as if he read it. Afsh delo Mairi pasuk zebi yitziat yedei chova b'mitzvah el b'mitziut shel kriya. That pasuk was a pasuk about finding the Sefer Torah and reading from it. That wasn't a dvar mitzvah. Why did the Gemara bring that as a proof? Rav Weiss says he brought it as a proof because it's not a halachic proof in the sense of here's an example where someone was doing a mitzvah and someone else was listening in. Rather, it's a story that happened where so and so heard something, namely King Yoshio, and it's as if he said it. And the Navi will ascribe to him as if he said it. And it wasn't a context of Shomeah kOneh in a mitzvah setting. It was just a context of Shomeah kOneh in a mitzvah setting, in a reality setting. All right? The Kavanah Chazal, they came into Shomeah have a kOneh, since one who listens, it says if they've repeated it, mi'etzem tiv'o, by its very nature, its essential nature. Because speech and listening and hearing something complete each other in their very nature. As we see in the language of the pasuk. Yardu min hashamayim, right? Memela mahanish Shomeah kOneh. Right? It's so obvious. He says that of course the Shomeah kOneh functioned here, right? There was a speech, and obviously the speech had a response. What was the response? Listening in. That's all we need, right? The fact that someone was listening in to what was happening is in and of itself the key to appreciating what it meant that speech happened. We don't need anything else. It was automatically like whatever the word is, just tied in with the reality of the speech that happened. Right? So he uses that language, right? They came down together because once there was speech, there was listening. I see your hand, Lar. Give me 1 more minute to finish this paragraph. And by the by, that's how Shomeah kOneh works. You should delve into this. It's actually he says it's a very deep chakira that I made over here. If the main thing that's going on here is no more than a halachic construct, if the whole point in reality of the speaking out loud of something is that it should be heard by whoever's there. If no one's there, then at least Hashem hears it, but everyone else is there, so they will hear it too. That's the purpose of it. So mistaber davei kOneh l'chol davar va'af le'inyan hefsek. So it should work for all purposes. That the one who answers, who listens, it's as if they're responding. It's as if they're vocalizing the words. It's a din in the mitziut. There's a sound. So if you're not ignoring the sound, you're listening to the sound, you're paying attention to it. That's like you're saying it. And therefore, he says it's not maybe a din in a halachic construct, either of shlichut, or it's as if you're saying the words, you're listening, The act of listening is the second half of dibur, right? But listening is as if you're repeating it. You're paying attention to it. It's as if you're saying the words. That's the main point. So hold on, I seem to be getting an emergency call here. I don't know what it's about. Okay, I think I have to go. Okay, not in a pastor emergency, but something that came up that I have to go to, fortunately. Okay, so Larry, you had a question, and I got to walk out the door.
If
Sorry.
you have to go, we'll stop and I can wait till next week.
Yeah, I think we'll have to do that. I'm so sorry. It's a little over time, and I'm getting pinged over here today. I guess the next thing, believe it or not. Okay, wonderful to be back. Wonderful to be learning. Next week, Monday night, 7:00. We'll have a little more discussion on this, and then we'll pull up stakes and get to the next Gemara. Okay.
Finish told, everyone.
Okay.
Thank you.
K'onesh